session. My name is Mohammed FRM, the preparation service provider for FRM, the certification by Global Association of Risk Professionals. So this is our third session of the guest speakers series that we have been doing for quite some time, and we are so honored and so glad to have Shahbaz Adil with us. Before we begin the stage, Shahbaz just as enterprise management from the prestigious Columbia University. He was a treasurer in the student government. Quite an honorable position there because the students' ideas quite related to what we have in Pakistan. Shahbaz has around 9 years of experience in risk management, comprising of 8 countries. He has been working with Deloitte Middle East for a very long time, and he is, mashallah, probably going to join UBS as an associate director. He is also an associate lecturer before joining the master's program. His base degree is in BBA from IB Karachi, and he is also a CFA level 3 candidate. So welcome, Shahbaz. Thank you for taking your time. I know it's quite early there, but thank you for waking up early. And if you could just introduce yourself a little, and then we can proceed to your presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. It's a distinct privilege. And I think I must also thank you on behalf of all of the people who attend these webinars and, all the sort of meaningful conversations and discourse that you try to have through these webinars, as well as through the Mastering FRM classes and your LinkedIn activity, which I, to be honest, really love. And I think in terms of my background, thank you for sharing the information. And I think I must also mention, where we go together. So we started working together back in PwC, spent about 3.5 years there together. I moved on to work for the Islamic International Rating Agency, which is where you're working right now. So that's also a wonderful coincidence. And so each time I do get to visit Pakistan, it's a thorough privilege to meet up and catch up. I'm happy to sort of take it forward, and let me know if I should proceed with the presentation.
I think you should, and thank you. We really had a good time there. And considering the step that I'm following, I'm assuming myself to be there in Middle East in quite some time. Good plan. But we have quite a few participants already joining us, and I think some of them will be joining in a few minutes. So I think you can proceed. To the participants, we will be having a question and answer sessions at the end of these webinar. So we will have around 10 minutes for the question and answer session. So if you have any questions during the presentation, just keep writing in the chat option and then questions at the end. So I think, Shahbaz, you can proceed.
All right, sounds good. So higher education considerations for risk professionals. So I'm a risk professional myself, have been in the industry for 9 years or 10,000 hours, as I like to say it. So I will sort of, the way I will take it is that, so there's the introduction part, which we've already covered by and large. I'll also talk about why doing a master's degree may be a good idea, and for whom it may be the best idea, and for some people it might not be the best option. So I'll also try to cover that aspect. And then I'll sort of touch upon the differences between an MS and an MBA program, the countries and universities that you could apply to, the application process itself. So I have a couple of slides there and some really important considerations. I'll then go on to sort of the later part of the presentation where I'll talk about Columbia University, the program that I have recently graduated from, and some other tips and suggestions, which is being, it will sort of be like a recap of the tips that I would have covered by then. And then finally a Q&A session. So I think we spoke about this by and large, but then just as a recap, I've recently completed my Master's of Science in Enterprise Risk Management from Columbia University. I chose to finish the program in 12 months instead of the typical 17 months, which the majority of the class chooses to pursue. I finished in August 2020, and I was the treasurer of the student government. I have 9 years of risk management experience, and I've had the good fortune of working across 8 countries, and the US is going to be now the ninth one. I'm an incoming associate director at UBS, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. I will be starting off from Monday, so pleased to share that good news with you all. And I'm a former manager at Deloitte Middle East. I was based out of their Riyadh office, but I was traveling extensively across Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and within Saudi Arabia as well. I'm an associate lecturer right now in the same program that I've graduated from. It's the IT risk course or the information technology risk course. Really love that topic and a really emerging topic. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later on. And I completed my BBA back in 2010, about a decade ago now from the IBA. Doesn't feel like a decade, but yeah, that's what the reality is. I'm also a CFA level 3 candidate. Okay, so I just thought to start with a very fundamental question, which is why a master's degree? Um, I think those of us who are now on the webinar are fairly open to the idea and are sold to the concept of pursuing a master's degree, but the choice may vary depending on individual circumstances. It's generally a very beneficial thing to do. It's always good to invest in oneself, and it is particularly beneficial if you are looking to move to another country or immigrate. Also, if you want to change an industry. Here, I would also want to mention that age is also a relevant factor. Generally speaking, people like to do higher education when they're younger, and I feel that is in general better. But having said that, that's not a rule. And um, it's also beneficial to have at least a couple of years of experience before doing a master's degree, just so you know what your interests are and what you want to be in the future. And then just a little bit on who it may not be the best option for. So for instance, if the university that you're going to may not offer great prospects in terms of employability or a return on investment, then it might not be such a good option. Or, if you have a good business back home, wherever you are in the world, then you also might not have to be, necessarily go for something of that sort. But even then it could be helpful because, it could help you be a better entrepreneur. And then finally, if you think that doing a master's would result in you losing seniority in your career in the long run as well, then this is something that one has to be wary of, and this can hold true when you have a lot of work experience. And I personally went when I had 9 years of experience, so I was concerned if something of this sort would happen to me, but alhamdulillah, I would say that it worked out. So, but it's important to keep this in perspective and then choose a good university and program that can help you achieve your career goals and objectives. And then finally, certifications. I feel that they're always a good idea, regardless of whether you're pursuing your master's or whether you've done your master's or not. I'm also going to be giving my CFA level 3 soon. So yeah, the motto has to be in continuous learning and continuous growth. Next up, I will talk about the MS programs and MBA programs and what the key differences may be. So if you would do a quick Google search on this, you will come up with a lot of different points, but I sort of have kept my personal perspective here based on years of experience in applying to universities, because I had a substantial history in applications to different universities before I ended up choosing Columbia University. So the first point is that MS programs tend to be more specialized compared to MBAs. It's true that within MBAs, you can have focus areas as well, like finance, marketing, supply chain. But MS programs tend to be more in depth in their particular area. So, you could do it in enterprise risk management, quantitative finance, data analytics, and there are hundreds of programs across the world, of course. And with this slide, I'm not really necessarily advocating one or the other, but I'm just sort of trying to, make us all appreciate the differences between the two. Next up, duration and cost. So because MS programs tend to be shorter, they also tend to be cheaper. So to give you a perspective, if somebody wants to go to MIT and do their MBA, typically end up taking them 2 years and about $250,000. But an MS from the same university would be about $125,000 with living expenses. But we're going to come to the finances part a little bit more later on, and I have some tips to share over there too. The prestige factor tends to be higher in MBA programs. Let's just say if I talk about Columbia University, they have an MBA program and they have an MS program as well. Because MBA students, invest so much more, and MBA programs are considered like the flagship program in any university. Universities tend to focus a lot in the career placements and job opportunities. So the prestige factor tends to be higher. And then, within the US as well, sometimes there's a notion that, oh, you've done an MBA. But that notion, I feel now, is less prevalent compared to, say, 5 or 7 years ago. It's more about, what your background has been, and the university in general is a bigger consideration, in my opinion, rather than the program itself. But if the program itself is a great match for your background, then that also really helps in the job market. In terms of student profile, MBA programs tend to attract more experienced and diverse students. MS programs would maybe not have students from so many countries, but in MBA programs, you would see that in a class of, say, 700 people, there are 120 countries represented. So that really adds to the experience. And yeah, finally, I just want to mention a US specific factor, which is the STEM designation. So first off, STEM, it stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And within the US, their higher education system recognizes certain degrees and certain programs as STEM eligible. And because they're considered to have a better value within the economy and in the future prospects of the country, graduates or international students who are graduates of STEM designated programs are eligible for a 3-year work authorization, and that work authorization is called optional practical training. So for somebody who's wanting to move abroad, uh, going in a STEM designated program is really beneficial because it uh, increases your chances of finding good opportunities within the US market specifically. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to share. A lot of people have not heard about this difference. And if a program is not STEM designated, the work authorization is just 1 year. But with the STEM work authorization is 3 years. And my program is also a STEM eligible program. Um, and then, there's always this question of which universities I should apply to, which countries should I apply to. So, and it's good, I feel, to have some sort of a focus, because then, the entire effort goes towards understanding where one wants to go. And yes, it's an important question, so one must try to narrow in on some options. But if one can spare the time and devotion to apply to many different universities, I feel that in general it tends to be a good idea, because if, let's say, you apply to 10 different universities, it's not a guarantee that you will get an acceptance from all of them. I, for one, to share you the completely opposite experience, I had applied to many different universities early on, but at that point in that year, I had just applied to Columbia University and nowhere else. So there is a message in the chat which says, I can't hear the audio. All right, so OS is able to hear me. So
No, Shabazz, I think, yes, your sound is fine. I think Rehan will have to check his audio. It's fine. It's fine to me.
All right, sure. So then coming back to then some key considerations about some of the more popular countries, and these are again my perspectives. So first off, the USA. Um, it has more top universities than anywhere else in the world. If you say look up the top 100 university rankings from any provider today, be it US News, Financial Times, and the list goes on. More than 50% of the top 100 universities tend to be from the US. And it has also a great economy, despite what we are seeing in COVID. US continues to be about 25% or 22% of the world GDP. So, and after I moved here, I could really see that in terms of opportunities. Next up, UK has the second greatest number of top universities after the US. It has the Oxfords and the Cambridges of the world. And in recent times, they have also improved their work authorization rules, whereby they are now also allowing students to stay back and work in the UK. They had it many years ago, and then they had continued it, excuse me, for a few years, and now the rule and the flexibility is back. So people, I've noticed, are beginning to apply to UK universities more and more compared to before. Australia and Canada, I'm not a big expert in these two countries, but in general, I would say that yes, they are English-speaking countries and offer some great universities, and they also offer paths towards naturalization after the masters if this is something that you may be interested in. Then there's Germany, and of course, we know Germany has free education, so that's a wonderful aspect. But we'll have to learn the German language in order to sort of utilize those universities. And then there is a host of other countries like China, Turkey, and the list goes on. But I would say that the good part in terms of China is that particularly for students who are from Pakistan, the Chinese government has a lot of scholarship opportunities available for Pakistani students. So that is a great aspect. And then it can provide the opportunity to learn the Chinese language and be familiar with an economy that is the rising star of today and is expected to become the largest economy in the world in not such a long time. And then there is Turkey. People like Turkey because it's generally a great country, um, and it's a Muslim country. If that may be a consideration for some. But my friends who went to Turkey and graduated, did their MBAs from Turkey. Hardly any one of them is in Turkey now, and they've all moved to other places in Europe. So that means that pursuing a degree in Turkey can potentially open up opportunities in the rest of Europe, but not a lot of people end up staying back in Turkey because maybe their exchange rate is a little weak. The job market has not that great many opportunities. So yeah, just some additional perspectives there. Um, so keep a note of any questions that you might have, and towards the end, I will be more than happy to share my perspectives and experiences. But now I think to what is probably the heart of the process, or the heart of my presentation, which is, what is the application process? And I think a lot of us do have a familiarity of it, but maybe some things that I learned, throughout the process, I'll just be talking about that. So overall, it is really beneficial to start early. And if, let's say, a student wants to start off a program in August 2021, right now is a good time to start. In fact, even if somebody had started a couple of months ago, that's good. There are people who I've seen take a couple of years to apply to different universities, um, and that may make sense because GRE and GMAT take a lot of time, and there are other steps of the process. Things don't always work out, but I think in general it's good to sort of keep a view that you would want to finish everything within uh, 10 to 12 months from the moment go till the time you sort of start university program, and things can happen in between, which happened in my case as well, which is why my master's program uh, got delayed. So, but the important thing is, if you're interested, keep your focus there, and eventually things do fall into place, which Alhamdulillah they did in my case, and I pray that it happens for all of you as well. So GRE and GMAT, I have given both. I've given GRE 2 times. I've given GMAT once. I've prepared for GMAT more than once, even though I gave it only once. But the key message here is that GRE tends to be tougher in the English section. There is a lot of vocabulary that they require you to learn, whereas GMAT, I feel, in my opinion, is easier on the English side, but relatively tougher on the quantitative or math side. Um, Whereas right now in the world, most universities are accepting both GRE and GMAT, but in some cases, universities tend to prefer GMAT more for MBA programs. Here, I'd also like to mention something interesting, that it is possible to get a waiver for GRE and GMAT in different situations. And if, and it can be beneficial at times depending on what your career and academic goals are. And to give you a perspective, even though I had given my GRE and GMAT, for my program at Columbia University, I did get the waiver. I don't know if they give the waiver right now, but my waiver was based on my experience in risk management, which they felt was highly relevant. And so experience can be one grounds for somebody to secure a waiver. I know of at least one university in Canada that provides waivers for GRE and GMAT for students who have done the CFA, or I think 2 levels of the CFA. No, in fact, it's at one point they were giving the waiver for people who have done level 2, but now it's for people who have done level 3 as well. And then COVID, you might be wondering why this word is here, but the fact of the matter is that right now is a very interesting time, and even though with COVID things are not going the way in the world that how we would want them to be, but it represents an opportunity in terms of university applications. So a lot of universities are relaxing their entrance requirements. They're giving more and more waivers for GRE and GMAT. There is an online version, I think, of the GRE or GMAT, and IELTS. So, so essentially, universities have relaxed their acceptance criteria. So even if you might not want to pursue your master's in, say, January or August, you can still get an offer for admission and maybe ask for a deferral, because universities are being liberal in the deferrals as well. So keep this in mind when you are applying for programs. And then for GMAT or GRE, either of them takes at least 2 to 3 months for the first attempt. And very often I've seen that people who are driven towards GRE and GMAT, they end up feeling that, oh, I want to give another attempt, and it happened to me as well. So it's good to keep at least a month or month and a half extra for an additional attempt, because in between two attempts, there has to be at least a gap of 1 month. And this is a requirement by both GRE and GMAT. So that's the first building block. Over here, there is also the building block of IELTS and TOEFL. But I've noticed that people from Pakistan are typically able to get a waiver for it. Not always, but because our university education, our bachelor's degrees are predominantly in English, and universities are willing to certify that. So instead of attempting or giving IELTS and TOEFL, if students can provide a university or provide a letter from their undergrad university that their program was in English, they should be able to get the waiver for IELTS and TOEFL. Then essays and recommendation letters. So I think the key message here is that they should be very original, and they should create a very strong pitch for the candidate. And at times, I think as a society in Pakistan, we try not to be so boastful of our accomplishments and achievements. But I think there is a right way to sort of showcase your achievements, and while not sounding boastful. And in the US, I feel that there is a very strong culture of people showing what they're good at, and it's not considered negatively. So yes, it's important to come up with points that maybe that make you stand out. So recognizing those, and I think throughout this process, and even with the essays themselves, it is essential to have some sort of a mentor who you want to discuss these things with, who can sort of review your essays. And I think in terms of recommendation letters, this is something that comes closer to the submission time of the application to the universities, at least for me. So, but it's good to sort of give a heads up to people. For instance, if you are right now in a company, and you know that you might not be in the same company a year from now, but 3 years from now you need a recommendation letter for somebody. Make sure to you have strong relationships with the people, and make sure that you sort of kept a personal brand and a relationship and rapport with those people, that they would be more than happy to sort of write a recommendation letter for you. Um, so the second slide of the application process. So now, assuming we've done GRE GMAT, we've applied to say 5 different universities, and we've gotten acceptances from 2 of them. Yes, it's good that you have these 2 options, and I have seen that in case told the other university that they have another offer from so and so university, they were able to get some form of a scholarship or an on-campus work opportunity. So it's good to have such options available, and I think it's just the simple principle of demand and supply, and it holds true in so many circumstances. Even if today somebody has 2 job offers, and uh, you know and 2 of them are similar, so one of the employer might be willing to give a better salary. So the same principle applies. And one very important point here is this one, which is factor in time for external credential evaluation. In recent years, particularly in the US, after universities gave an offer for acceptance to international students, they expect an external credential evaluation. Typically, uh, WES does this. WES stands for World Education Services, and they are one of the providers for external credential evaluation. This process is quite tedious and time consuming. It first involves HEC degree verification, and HEC degree verification has its own set of requirements, like having your 12th grade and intermediate education certificates available, having an attested degree from your university, and then once HEC does that, only then WES would start, or any other external credential evaluation would start their process. And this is and this can take easily 2 to 3 months. Um, and then the visa process. Uh, I'm sorry, this should read finances, not visa process, but finances is yet another very important aspect. A lot of people, want to finance it from personal sources. Some people want to go for scholarships, and then there are situations where neither of them is possible. So I'd like to tell you about these 3 companies: Prodigy Finance, Empower, and Brain Capital. Not a lot of people might know of them, but all of them provide uh, uncollateralized loans to international students to pursue higher education abroad. These sort of financing companies have their criteria, but I think the key thing here is that they only finance to students from certain universities and for certain programs. Prodigy Finance, I think, is one of the pioneer here, and I've taken a loan from Prodigy Finance. So there are pros and cons to this. I'm definitely not advocating any of them, but I just want to tell you a little bit more about them, just so you know that there is also a possibility of pursuing them. Um, the cost of the loan is typically quite high, and the loans would vary. The interest rate would vary anywhere between 9% and 12%. It's linked to the LIBOR. So I'm talking about a APR here after sort of factoring in the application fees. and they can provide you the loan for the entire program as well as the cost of living. So if, say, a master's program costs at, let's say, Yale, it costs with living $100,000, they would Prodigy Finance would finance all of it, and they would expect repayment 6 months starting after 6 months of graduation. Meanwhile, interest would continue to accrue, and then the repayment plan would be spread across 15 years. However, the reality is that the job prospects in many places, particularly in the US, it is possible to recover an investment such as $100,000 within a period of 3 years. Sometimes even less, depending on how you're living and what your cost of living is like. And the good thing about Prodigy Finance as well as Empower is that there is no prepayment penalty. So, I mean, you can just choose to repay the loan within a year. Empower, I think the way it differs from Prodigy Finance is that Prodigy Finance has a very strong customer service. They are very streamlined in their processes. Empower is good as well, but they typically provide financing up to $25,000, not beyond. Um, and I think a note of caution for both of these providers is that people who are living in the US or who have some kind of a citizenship or a green card or H-1B visa in the US. I know I'm sort of throwing a lot of terminologies, but if you do not know, I mean, these are different forms of work authorizations and residency statuses within the US. So those people can get much cheaper loans at 2 or 3% within the US. But loans from, and when people come on international student status here, they eventually convert to, say, H-1B or green card, but they cannot refinance any of the Prodigy Finance or Empower loans with a US lender. So this is, something that people do not know of, but I just want to share with you. And then finally, Brain Capital. Brain Capital is something really interesting, and it is only there for universities in Europe. And Brain Capital has an entirely different model. And what they expect is that once you graduate, you will pay a certain percentage of your monthly income to Brain Capital. And it does not matter what your salary would be. They would, I don't know how much loan they can provide, but in this sense, it's a great concept because it's a less risky concept because whatever you earn, you just pay, say, 10% or 12% of that, and that percentage is decided by Brain Capital. One of my cousins who recently went to and graduated from INSEAD, he took a loan from Brain Capital. The one condition that Brain Capital does have is that they have a fixed term of 15 years as well for all of their loan arrangements, but you cannot prepay them. And their model basically is that people who end up working in high income economies tend to sort of subsidize the people who are working in a low income economy, for instance. So I never knew about this, and there is very less people do not know about this. I'll really emphasize this. It's a really interesting model. And for those who may be interested and have this consideration, I also reached out to somebody knowledgeable in Islamic finance, a mufti, and they also said that this is a very acceptable format from a Islamic finance perspective. But Brain Capital does not provide financing in the US to international students. For people who have European citizenship and they are pursuing education in the US, they can also avail the Brain Capital facility. So yeah, that's my take on finances. Next up, the visa process. It's best to apply at least 4 to 5 months in advance of your start. Even before is also good, because you'll then have clarity that, okay, from this state, you will be going to so-and-so place, because until you have the visa in your hand, there's always this question mark whether or not you'll be able to go, whether you get the visa or not. Here, I'd like to tell you a term called administrative processing. And this is relevant in the context of US visas. So what happens is that for any US visa, there can be three possible outcomes. The first is, of course, acceptance, and then rejection. And the third is something in between. It's called administrative processing. Is somebody wanting to speak? Sorry.
No, I think there was some distortion from your end.
All right. So I'll continue then, and let me know if there is any disturbance in the voice at my end.
No, it's fine now.
All right, sounds good. So administrative processing, yeah, so it's the third outcome where basically the US visa office says that we want to do some more scrutiny in your application. And essentially, I was supposed to join my master's program 2 years before my actual start, and the delay happened because my visa application went into administrative processing, and it stayed in that status for 11 months. Administrative processing for some people is only 2 weeks. Typically, it's not more than 2 months, but for my case, it was 11 months. So I just want to share that unexpected things can happen, and which is why, and I also wanted you all to be familiar with the term administrative processing. Okay, so these were so far the broad points, and I'll try to sort of cover up the points around Columbia University specifically and the enterprise risk management program that I graduated from. I'll try to sort of be a little fast on these slides because I want to sort of make sure that there is sufficient time for the Q&A session as well. So here I've just sort of included some photos to give you a perspective of how the campus looks like. I mean, on the top right corner, this is a nighttime photo when it was snowing on campus. I've not taken these photos, by the way. They are from the website. It doesn't snow too much in New York City typically, but it does snow every year necessarily. And the purpose of sharing this information is as a source of motivation because I mean, it helped me when I was, applying. So, some facts and figures about about Columbia University. It was established in 1754, so more than 250 years ago. It has 33,000 students, of which 30% are undergrad and the rest are masters or PhD or other kind of researchers and scholars. And it has 20 different schools. I'd like to emphasize the concept of schools over here. It's somewhat like departments in the context of Pakistani universities, let's say, or universities in other places of the world. And here, uh, within the US, I felt that these departments are like, or these schools are like separate universities, and they all come together under the umbrella of, say, a broader university like Columbia University. And every school has a different level of reputation. So whenever you're applying to a university, make sure you understand which school within that university you're applying to, and how how it is. I mean, how good it is compared to, say, other schools of that university, or whether it's a leader in that area compared to other universities. So Columbia University has, of course, hundreds of programs across medicine, law, business, arts, international affairs, and it has 12,000 international students. So it is one of the biggest universities in the US in terms of international students, and they are from 156 different countries. It has an endowment fund of $11 billion. And it is ranked number 3 among US national universities by US News in their latest survey. Among the alumni, Columbia University has 96 Nobel laureates. And I felt that this was a phenomenal achievement because there are so many countries in the world who would have just maybe a very few Nobel laureates. Even a populous country of smart people like Pakistan just has maybe 2 or 3 Nobel laureates. And so it's a great achievement for a university. There are 125 Pulitzer Prize winners. Sorry, um, uh, 39 Oscar winners, 26 foreign heads of states, and 3 US presidents that are among the alumni of Columbia University. And Columbia University is one of the 8 Ivy League universities. And the list of Ivy League universities is Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, UPenn, and Yale. And Columbia University is the only Ivy League university that's in New York City. Okay, so notable alumni from Columbia University. So in the first row, I have chosen some Pakistani alumni because I understand that most of the audience today is from Pakistan. And in the next row, there are some US alumni. But Abdul Razak Daud, our current federal minister and founder of DESCON from the Daud family. Then Dr. Muhit Pirzada, an anchor person. And Fatma Bhutto, who's a writer. And then in the US context, Barack Obama. Speaking of presidents, I wonder if any of you is following the US election. Certainly, I am.
I think we all are following it, and we are waiting for the final result, which is just handing on the cliffs. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, a lot of anxiety and curiosity across the world, and probably, yeah, this person affects the world more than anyone else in current alive people. Yeah, and then there is Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, and who through his holding company owns stakes in many prominent companies like Apple, and he's among the 10 richest people of the world. And Mr. S. Robson Walton, he's the chairman of Walmart, also among the richest people in the world. Not that rich is a necessarily a good thing, but I just mean to say that they are notable people. And yes, they're certainly good professionals as well because they've done really well professionally. Um, and then I think one of the big advantages that Columbia University has is its New York location. So that factor, I mean, plays out in many ways. I think just being in that location, which is so diverse, so vibrant, uh, is a big part of the learning. And I'm really thankful to have that exposure. Um, so NYC, of course, is the most populous and vibrant city of the US. It is described as the cultural, financial, and media capital of the world. They say that whatever happens in New York City, whatever new thing happens, it typically ends up sort of spreading across the world. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to um, financial, we have the Wall Street in New York City, and all of the big sort of media groups have their head offices in New York City as well. And New York City also is the headquarters of United Nations. So in that sense, it has a lot of eminence from a diplomatic perspective. And every year, world leaders would fly into Manhattan and attend the General Assembly session, which was, of course, virtual this year. So a lot of influence in that sense. And the New York City metropolitan area has a GDP of $2 trillion. So I wonder, so does anybody know what the GDP of Pakistan is?
Should I answer?
No. Well, sure.
It's
You're
around three.
yeah.
Yeah, it's around 300 billion. So it's, I think, 1/6 or even less than that.
Yes, yes. So I just included the statistic to show the significance, of what one city can be capable of. And this 2 trillion represents the different companies there and operations, and the operations that they have there and the opportunities associated with this GDP. And then hopping on to the MS in Enterprise Risk Management program. This master's degree is 12 to 17 months long. An internship is optional, and it has 36 credits, which means that we have to complete 12 subjects and 4 per semester. So we can finish in 3 semesters. The program started in 2016, so not a very old program, and the batch size is about 300 students per year. Average work experience is 2 to 3 years in this program, and around 10% of the students have 10 plus years of experience or 9 or more years of experience. So I'm in that bucket. 80% of the students are international, and most of them are from China. The tuition fee is about $90,000 for the program. The program does not offer a lot of scholarship opportunities, but there are some on-campus work opportunities. Um, so it's a very applicative program. I felt that it caters to the needs of the industry really well, and it focuses a lot on the emerging trends such as cybersecurity, data analytics, um, in the context of risk management, because as you understand, the analytics side of risk management is also really important. And then it also, it's basically holistic, as the word enterprise suggests. It covers, all aspects of risk management in the context of any enterprise, such as the framework, the governance, the risk identification, quantitative aspects, risk decision making, and how to communicate that risk information. The program is available online, in person, in a hybrid format. Um, International students who are in the will have to come to the US to pursue it full time. They do not have the option of pursuing this program on a part-time basis in person, but they can do it part-time on the online format. It is a STEM designated program. We were talking about the STEM designation earlier, so that means it is eligible for 3 years OPT. And it is, once again, holistic also in terms of the different risk sources such as strategic risks, operational risks, financial risks, and insurance risks. And yeah, they also have a lot of focus on the communication aspect um, of risk management, in the sense that any professional needs to have good communication skills. So they recognize that and try to sort of cover it within the academics. And I think so this is something that I've picked up from what the program people say, and when they talk about this program, that there's four main aspects that it covers really well, and that is the knowledge, the technical skill, the communication skill, as well as the business skill. Because I think for uh, risk management is not just that, oh, don't do this because it's risky. Don't go out to buy grocery because you might get into an accident. But that is unreasonable, because it is essential to go out and get grocery, right? So it this program teaches you to sort of value the business side of things as well. Um, this is a list of courses. The top section is the core mandatory courses, which every student has to do. The value-based ERM course is a new methodology towards risk management, and our program director is the author of that methodology. So that is something that is also taught in this program. And I think one of my very preferred courses is the external stakeholder requirements course, the third one in the list, because it teaches you a lot about these regulations. And I think for any risk professional, recognizing the value of these regulations is really key. Aside from that, there's a whole list of electives and selectives, as they like to call them. And the course also allows you to take at least any two courses in any program of any school within Columbia. So you can cross-register with the business school, or if you're interested in, say, international affairs, you can go to the international affairs school and take a course from there. It does not necessarily have to be linked to the degree, but I feel that it's a good option available. I think faculty for me has been one of the best things. They All of them are sort of what is called adjunct faculty in the US, but what they mean by adjunct faculty is more like visiting faculty. Uh, but all of them are seasoned risk professionals. A lot of them have day jobs heading their risk management departments or an area within risk management. And they would typically have 20 to 30 years of experience. Some of them are, recently retired. And in the classes are always in the evening after 6 p.m. So it's after office hours. So it's a distinct privilege to be able to sort of learn from these people and ask them questions related to their experience, and the insights that they provide are really nice. So former partners at Deloitte, somebody who's the ERM head of S&P, PwC former partner, people from Citibank, CIT Group, Brown Brothers Harriman, chief audit executive. And I think this is, what students also like to choose a university for. They are always curious on where the graduates end up going. So really good names here: JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Citi, UBS, of course, and then Goldman Sachs, and so on. I think I'm down to the last couple of slides, and I just want to sort of quickly share why I chose the ERM program. Um, I think this might probably be evident, but yeah, it's a good fit for my background and experience. I wanted to be in the risk management profession, so very relevant for me. Um, I've done my research. I've not come across a better risk management program in the world. So for me, it's the best ERM program in the world. The Columbia prestige, of course, plays a big part. New York location, and of course, it's STEM designated. And I think finally, just some recap of the tips and suggestions that we might have talked about, and some maybe new ones as well. But I think so. I'm assuming that a lot of the people on the call have risk management experience, but I feel that some interest and relevance in risk management is needed to be able to secure an admission here. It is not essential to have many years in risk management that how I have had. Even if you've had some internships um, related to risk management or audit, or you've done FRM, or at least one level of the FRM, this is something that can really add a lot of value to your application. Um, GMAT GRE waiver is possible. We spoke about that. Do get your essays reviewed by your mentors. Start early. Take into account the time needed for the external credential verification. Explore external scholarships. There is a bunch of scholarships, and I know that OS also knows a lot about them. But things like the Fulbright scholarship, and or in the context of the UK, there's the Chevening scholarship. So keep researching and applying for them. And yeah, just to maybe emphasize again that this 3-year STEM OPT is a plus. So try to choose a program that, if you're coming to the US, has that plus. Do also keep an eye out on the political climate, because the government, the ruling party has a big impact on these education visa related rules. And take COVID into account. I would say treat it as an opportunity, and do proceed and apply. With that, we have some time for a Q&A session. Do follow me on LinkedIn. This is my LinkedIn profile.
Thank you, Savas. Thank you so much. I think it was very well planned and very well executed. So thank you so much. We have a couple of questions. The first one is, how can actuaries add value to risk management in banking, and how likely can actuaries go to risk management with insurance experience like 3 years?
All right. So how can actuaries add value to risk management in banking, and how likely can actuaries go to risk management with insurance experience like 3 years? Focusing just on the first one, I mean, actuarial sciences, scientists in general, of course, it's a very highly valued field. It's considered a very one of the highest paid areas in the US. It is true that most actuaries do work for insurance companies, even in the context of the US. However, a lot of these banks are called bank holding companies, and they also own insurance firms. So they need people for that aspect of things. And then, if there are things that need actuarial skills within the context of a bank, then that's where that skill would also come in handy. I'll also want to tell you about another program. It's a master's in actuarial sciences at Columbia University. So that is something that, if you're interested in higher education, you could also explore that. It's a great area to be in, and I've always admired OS for having that sort of background as well. And then next up, I feel your question is, how valuable is the FRM for risk management compared with other certifications like CFA or actuarial papers or MBA? I feel that there are a lot of certifications within the risk management space, and some we may or may not have heard of. FRM is considered the gold standard when it comes to risk management. And the job market in the Middle East, in the US, and also in Pakistan, I feel, does distinguish between FRM, CFA, and actuarial sciences people. So my bosses, because I started off CFA at a very early stage, right after my BBA, it has proved to be helpful for me. But my bosses have always come to me and told me, Shabazz, have you thought about giving FRM? So I feel that FRM holds more value, and it is something that you know is better uh, in a risk management context. At the same time, it's useful to note what area within risk management that you're working on. So if you're an auditor, then CIA is better. If you're an operational risk, there are certifications related to operational risk. If you are in IT security or cyber security, look at CISA or CISSP. So it varies. But having said that, all of these certifications, even if you might not be applying them daily, and in general, let's face it, these certifications cover so much. No job applies more than 20-30% of every certification. It is the prestige factor I feel associated with them, which really counts. And even if you've done your CFA, but you're in a risk role, or if you've done actuarial sciences papers, people would understand and value that more often than not, because they think that you're a smart person to sort of pass those papers, and also somebody who believes in learning and growing. So yeah, that's my response to the second one.
Thank you, Saras. I think you have answered it pretty well. And thank you so much for your time. I think we should be signing off. This video will also be updated on our YouTube channel with the name of masteringfrm.com. Sorry, masteringfrm YouTube. You can also follow Shabazz, and if you aren't following me in LinkedIn, you can find me there as well. Mohammed Wes Asidati is the name. So thank you so much, Shabazz. All the best for the job and for the election results. I hope it turns out well, because it's going to impact you more than us. All the very best, and thank you for taking your time today.
You're most welcome, and it's been a pleasure here, and thank you so much for having me and organizing this session.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Signing off. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.